The most dangerous individuals in society are not those who lurk in shadows, but those who walk comfortably in the light. They are the charming colleagues who remember birthdays, the attentive partners who anticipate needs, the empathetic friends who always have time to listen. What makes them truly formidable is not their malevolence, but their ability to cloak it in the ordinary trappings of decency. This first section peels back the layers of this disguise, revealing how predators construct and maintain their facades of normalcy through psychological sophistication and behavioral precision. The human brain is wired to seek patterns and familiarity. We are biologically predisposed to trust those who resemble us in manner, speech, or belief. This evolutionary shortcut served our ancestors well when judging potential allies in small tribal groups. But in our complex modern world, it has become a vulnerability that sophisticated manipulators exploit with clinical efficiency. The 5 strategies explored in this section, the Chameleon Effect, polite predation, feigned empathy, controlled temper, and masterful mirroring, represent the foundational tools in the psychological arsenal of dangerous individuals. These are not the crude instruments of cartoon villains, but the refined techniques of those who understand human psychology at its deepest levels. Consider the Chameleon Effect, where predators don't simply adapt to their environment, they become indistinguishable from it. This goes beyond basic social mimicry. Recent neuroscientific research has shown that skilled manipulators activate our mirror neuron systems more effectively than genuine individuals, creating a false sense of kinship that bypasses our rational defenses. The implications are profound. Our very neurology conspires against us when encountering these individuals. Historical cases from con artists like Ferdinand de Mara, who successfully impersonated surgeons and college professors, to modern corporate fraudsters demonstrate how complete these transformations can be. What's most unsettling is not their ability to pretend, but their capacity to believe their own performances, if only temporarily. Polite predation takes this deception a step further by weaponizing social norms themselves. In cultures worldwide, courtesy functions as social lubricant, allowing strangers to interact with minimal friction. Manipulators reverse engineer this system, using politeness not as a means of facilitating genuine connection, but as a tool for exploitation. The psychological mechanism at work here is what sociologist Irving Goffman called impression management, taken to its most calculated extreme. When researchers analyzed the behavior of convicted white-collar criminals, they found these individuals were consistently rated as more polite and agreeable than their peers prior to their exposure. Their civility wasn't just a personality trait, it was a strategic choice, maintained with the same discipline a soldier maintains their uniform. Feigned empathy represents perhaps the most insidious of these tactics because it preys on our most vulnerable moments. Unlike simple deception, which can be uncovered through fact-checking, counterfeit empathy is nearly impossible to verify in the moment. Studies in clinical psychology have shown that even trained professionals struggle to distinguish between authentic and simulated empathy in controlled settings. The difference lies not in what is said, but in what happens afterward. Authentic empathy creates connection. Feigned empathy creates dependency. This distinction becomes clear in the patterns of abusive relationships, where expressions of concern are inevitably followed by subtle manipulations. The predator's understanding of their target's pain isn't used to alleviate suffering, but to map vulnerabilities for future exploitation. The controlled temper reveals another dimension of this psychological warfare. Where primitive aggression would trigger our fight-or-flight response, calculated anger management activates our more sophisticated and therefore more easily manipulated social cognition. Workplace studies have demonstrated that employees report higher stress levels under managers who employ controlled hostility than under those who openly lose their temper. The uncertainty created by this behavior triggers chronic anxiety, which in turn impairs judgment and makes victims more susceptible to further manipulation. This explains why victims of psychological abuse often describe feeling crazy rather than angry, their oppressors have weaponized their own emotional regulation against them. Masterful Mirroring completes this arsenal by offering the most seductive illusion of all, the soulmate fantasy. Neuroimaging studies have shown that when we encounter someone who reflects our deepest values and aspirations, our brain's reward centers light up as if we've found a missing piece of ourselves. Manipulators engineer this experience deliberately, using information gathered through careful observation to construct what psychologist Robert Hare calls a synthetic personality. The tragedy is that this artificial connection often feels more intense than genuine bonds, creating an addiction that persists even after the mask slips. The aftermath of these relationships frequently leaves victims not just heartbroken, but fundamentally doubting their own judgment, a psychological wound that can take years to heal. These 5 strategies share a common thread. They exploit the gap between our evolutionary psychology and modern social complexity. Our brains developed to navigate small, tight-knit communities where deception was difficult to maintain over time. In today's fragmented, fast-paced world, predators can maintain their facades long enough to do significant damage before moving on. Understanding these mechanisms isn't about promoting paranoia, but about developing what psychologist Daniel Goleman might call emotional surveillance, the ability to notice discrepancies between words and actions, between public persona and private behavior. The Mask of Normalcy works because we want to believe in it. Our social contract depends on assuming basic goodwill in others. What makes these predators so dangerous is not that they violate this contract, but that they mimic it so well. As we'll explore in subsequent sections, the true horror begins not when the mask slips, but when we realize it was never real to begin with. That what we took for genuine connection was always psychological warfare in disguise. The chapters that follow will examine how these foundational tactics combine into more complex strategies of manipulation. But always remember, every psychological predator begins by mastering the art of appearing normal. In a world where we're conditioned to equate normalcy with safety, this may be their most powerful weapon of all. The implications extend far beyond individual relationships. These patterns manifest in corporate culture, political leadership, and even societal movements. When we examine historical atrocities or modern institutional failures, we often find that the perpetrators weren't obvious monsters, but individuals who expertly manipulated societal norms and expectations. This understanding should inform everything from how we vet leaders to how we structure organizational checks and balances. As we proceed to the next section on psychological warfare, keep in mind that the strategies we've explored here are merely the groundwork. They represent the psychological equivalent of a magician's misdirection, making you look where they want you to look, so you never see what's really happening. The most effective predators understand that the best way to hide a lie isn't to conceal it, but to wrap it in just enough truth to make it indistinguishable from reality. This is why their masks aren't just convincing, they're often beautiful, and that may be the most dangerous thing about them.